The things that are illegible are the things you actually want, because there's mystery in them. If I can really surprise you about something, I'm most of the way to selling you something. Like the mystery that makes the sales process worthwhile, right? Without mystery, there is no margin.
The guys who do really well tend to be the 2 and 20 guys who are deeply mysterious.
Like, here is the pain points we're solving you, and here is how much money it's costing you, and here is how much you earn by using our product. And then there's the counter thing, which is like, this product feels nice. It is aesthetically beautiful. You like it for reasons you have a hard time putting your finger on. The great thing about Silicon Valley is also the great thing that sort of holds it back in these powerful ways, which is that it's a bunch of nerds that don't understand aesthetics, except for a handful of them really do understand aesthetics, and then they win.
Well, hello everyone, it's Jim O'Shaughnessy with yet another Infinite Loops. I was upbraiding my potentially recurring guest before we began recording.
I'm not a potentially recurring guest. I'm a kinetically recurring guest.
Alex Danco, my friend and inimitable philosopher of basically all things. I can throw virtually anything at you and you can talk about it. You can, like, you are amazing because, like, give you a mic, you'll go 30 minutes on anything, which I love. And we've experimented quite a bit in the past. And this time around, same deal. I haven't really prepared at all. I was gleeful when I saw yesterday that you were going to be my conversant today, Alex. You, well, for people who don't know Alex, I think we are creating a complex adaptive system here with all of the podcasts that is going to make an emergent, amazing, maybe even best-selling book with all of the things that we have discussed in the past. Alex is the director of product at Shopify, not Spotify, right?
Not Spotify, that's correct.
Shopify.
One of these days, we'll get it clean.
And so I'm just gonna jump right in. Sure. And it's kind of my, what the fuck is going on? Like, what the fuck? I was rereading one of my favorite science fiction books called The Fifth Science, and they've got a passage in there that I want to read to you, and then we will discuss. In the book, he says, we call it narrative collapse. When a planet gets so connected, basically a time inevitably arrives where it becomes really difficult to work out what is actually happening. Video, audio can be fake. Testimony is unreliable. All truths fall into a relative flatness.
Okay, this is a good prompt for me to bring up one of my great grievances of the past couple months. And this is surely something that you have some opinions about. And I genuinely don't know which side of the fence you're on this. So I'd like to know, Jim, are you pro or are you anti hiding likes on Twitter? Was it a good move or was it a bad move?
Wow, I hadn't even so.
Yeah, I'll connect this to your question in a second, but I want to know where you stand on the issue.
Connect it to my question, but I am, like Patrick used to joke, I ruin every sample survey that I get put into. Because, like,
You don't ruin the sample surveys, you just respond to it with gifts.
Alex, I literally do not care nor know how. I know how many followers I have. I have no idea who is following me, nor do I care. I never respond to likes. Nice, fine. But so is it good or bad? Well, I think on the good side, it allows people who are always worried and terrified what other people will think of them, right? To stop falsifying their preferences and actually, like material that might put them in a class of citizenry that might be in the basket of deplorables or the, uh, that type thing. By the way, I think one of the funniest things Elon could do would be to turn likes back on.
That's the big joke, right? Everybody was like, one day you just turn it back on again. Yeah, it's the Twitter version of the in the office when Jim starts adding nickels into Dwight's phone handset one at a time every day. It's like one day it took them all out.
So I mean, like, I don't really care. I mean, that's my answer. I don't know. I will look to you to educate me on whether it was a good thing or a bad thing.
Sure. Okay. So first, let me connect why I asked you this question, or this question back to your question about narrative collapse. So when we think about this idea of like, hey, what does anybody even think is real anymore? Like, what is the actual true narrative versus what is sort of these kind of like reflexively created narratives that can be, deep faked into existence or psyoped into existence or whatever. It's like, okay, if you take Twitter, I refuse to call it X. I don't know about you, but like it's Twitter. Come on.
I always call it Twitter.
Yeah. You take Twitter as sort of like this little microcosm of the world and saying like, listen, like here is this nice little terrarium where you can observe like what is the discourse. To me, the single greatest signal of like who was really caring about what was not the hard feed of posts and retweets. It was the soft signal of being able to piece together these breadcrumbs of seeing which people liked what thing. Because this gave you a very a trail of breadcrumbs that you, the Twitter user, needed to piece together to figure out what people were thinking and what people thought were funny, right? And what the joke is. Right. So Twitter is basically a format for discourse where the native unit of content is like the joke and the main character. Right. We've talked about this before, right? It's like every day on Twitter, there's a main character, and every day on Twitter, there is a joke. And the way that you consume the format is you rarely see the joke first. You see the reactions to the joke first. Then you have to go figure out, okay, what is the joke that we're all making today? Or you see people making fun of the main character, but you don't know who it is. Then you have to go, it's like you have to go do the work of like back propagating to find out who we're all making fun of today. Right? It's an incredible format. And the reason why I bring this up is like that act of back propagation of deriving the main character and deriving the joke is an incredibly bottoms up way of maintaining the integrity of real narratives, right? So because the narrative is built continuously by people. It is not something that is made and then put out into the world and then commented on. The act of commenting it is what makes it in the first place, right? It's the reaction is the content distilled down to its purest form. Now, what has really irked me about removing likes, or not removing likes, I should say, making likes private, is it removed one of the main ways by which that rebuilding of the story continuously happened. Right? It's like, hey, like here's imagine some like, like so someone makes a JD Vance joke, right? And then there are a million riffs off the joke, and when one of those riffs might get likes from these 5 people, that like you seeing the like of the tweet making fun of the joke is a reconstruction of the joke, right? That happens through the reader's mind, right? Each time, right? It makes the thing new, which in fact is like, this is how our brains actually work, right? You are not consuming reality, right? You are consuming a construct that you are making all the time. And Twitter mirrored that thing really perfectly. When you take out that key signal of these people liked the tweet that made fun of this joke that referenced that person, right? You're left with something that is really like dumbed down to lowest common denominator in a weird way. It's just sort of like bulk likes, which is like less interesting. Now, the converse to that, of course, is this very, very real thing that you identified, which is preference falsification, right? This is like, yes, of course, there is this human nature to like not actually like what you like and not actually say what you're really thinking. But like, I'm not convinced that it was worth the cost here. Like, it seems like a really ham-fisted way to approach that, as opposed to with the real service that likes were doing. And I say that as overall, like I'm not like a hater of like how Elon's been running Twitter. I think that community notes is one of the most successful products of the last decade. It is unbelievably good. Holy shit. Right. It's like, yeah, like that product has earned so much goodwill from a like it is truly working at something very difficult, then like look, clearly like I think this team has a set of principles over how they want this network to work, this sort of pulsating massive story. But I think that like hiding likes really did a lot of damage to people's ability to not only reconstruct the joke as is being generated all day, but also construct who should I be following, right? Who should like what threads should I be in the future anticipating to pull on? Because that's how you construct a really great experience, right? I think it must be miserable for someone starting out on Twitter today, if there even are such people, right? It's like, how do you know how to get into this? It's like the public likes were a really great way to start. And so I'm sad that's gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my
I like the take. I especially, as you know, I don't watch live TV. I don't watch sports. And yet I know through the memes about the Australian breakdancer because like they were some of the best fucking memes. I laughed out loud. And to the point, to your point, I had to figure out when I first saw the first one, which was Breaking Bad, you know, it was the TV poster for the show Breaking Bad, and it's got them on top, and then it has her. I just laughed immediately, and I'm like, I wonder what this is about. And so it did drive me to go find her Elaine Bennis version of breakdancing.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, like it is really in that format of like explicitly re-deriving the original topic in the minds of the consumers is, how do I put it? Do you think that this actually meaningfully varies by platform? I guess it must. I'm basically only on Twitter. Like I don't use Instagram or TikTok or any of those other things. So I don't really know to what degree, if at all. Like clearly, like things go viral on TikTok, right? It's like that. It's just as much, if not more. But I don't really know as a non-consumer, like what the actual mechanism of this is. Like I know that like reactions are a big thing, which rings true to me. But I don't know, like, do you feel like your use of Twitter has changed meaningfully over time, or do you use it the same way?
Use it exactly the same way. I just sort of, you know, this too shall pass is usually my attitude about any changes. Again, I'm an anomaly in that I really don't give a shit as long as you can pretty much say whatever you want, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I really don't like I wish there was some way to verify a person's identity. And yet, coming from my previous background in asset management, a lot of compliance departments will not let really super smart people comment on social media. And so most financial asset management folks are anonymous. They're not anonymous.
Right. All the good ones are anonymous.
Yeah, all the good ones are anonymous. Now, I know most of them because I reach out and figure out who they are. But the idea that, you know, the trolls and bots, you know, I ignore them, but I know that other people get really worked up about
it. Paul Graham tweeted yesterday something, I'm paraphrasing this, I'm going to butcher it, but basically like, I bet there will be a next wave of social networks where suppressing trollship is actually like built into the architecture in the first place, much in the way that you have like secure operating systems, right, as opposed to the open and vulnerable ones. Perhaps that's true. I have a hard time imagining how you would do that in any way that would still make it meaningfully open, right? I think it's like, my other response to that is like, I think in practice that like exists today. It's called like Instagram and Threads mostly, right? Like, like yeah, I guess that's not built into the social network itself so much as that just like works due to sort of like very, very heavy moderation, like as a culture and in the business, which is no mean feat, right? It is hard to actually accomplish. You know, that team over at Meta has clearly like decided that moderation is the product, and they have succeeded at it accordingly. But
so
I don't know.
I'm going to move on to the intent of the first question. So, like as an old, right? If the following things had happened when I was say 25, 30, right? If a sitting president of the United States had to be hounded out of seeking re-election by his governing party and was replaced by his vice president, who, let's be real here, prior, like she didn't get much love from either Biden, his administration, or anyone, right? And so that has happened. And where are the news people? Where is Sam Donaldson shouting at the press secretary every morning? Why aren't you invoking the 25th Amendment? If he can't run, how come you're not? I mean, it seems to me that our corporate media has kind of just gone like, where are the? Let me leave it here. Where are the journalists? Which I love. I love real journalists, i.e., oh, something happened over at the Watergate. We might want to look into that.
Did you ever watch Silicon Valley, the show?
Yes, of course.
It was like, oh, these aren't real journalists. These are tech journalists. You think one of them is going to go to jail to protect a source? They were for TechCrunch. Anyway, back to your question. So, all right, I don't know to what degree CNN or Fox or any of those people were in fact putting up any characters to say those things every day. I think, to me, right, as a person who gets their news from Twitter, I feel like the main way in which I encounter, like, specifically, like, where's 25th Amendment, who's going to do it, is sort of like characters like David Sachs. You get, like, there have been some characters that have really David Sachs in particular, man. Do you remember that really good week on Twitter where it's like, not only did we get, hey, hear about this guy JD Vance, so you get someone from work and the couch has a headache. Not only did we get that, and we got the whole, like, all of Silicon Valley piles on David Sachs all at once, and it was really spectacular. Not just the, like, Paul Graham being like, hey, buddy, do you want people to actually know what happened? Not only that, but then also when Sachs spoke at the RNC and it was like crickets and some isolated boos or whatever for whatever he was saying about Ukraine. I can't remember what the content was. It doesn't matter. What he remembers is the reaction to the content, which is not whatever he said, not even the reaction at the convention, which was crickets, but then him tweeting where he was like, nobody booed. Some people clapped, actually. It's like, hi, buddy. Never tweet those words.
PR fail 101.
No, nobody booed. Some people clapped. Actually, is one of the great one-liners. Of course, it's like, like he's obviously him and Jonathan, the all-in guys, have clearly figured out a formula that works. So you can't slag it too badly, but also it's like, man, that was funny. What a great week. I tweeted out that week. I was like, Twitter's so back, right? And now it's like, it really feels like it's sort of back to the that manic energy that was sort of like pulsing with like 2013, 14, 15, that period of time. There are some flavors of that are back.
Yeah, but I'm going to continue to drill in until you like give me an answer that doesn't be just Twitter. Like,
don't you remember Media Training 101? Don't answer the question. Just say whatever.
Of course I remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you think I made it through being in the media all those years? I completely ignored the question and then answered the one I wanted to. Yeah. No, but seriously, like, and I mean this objectively, or I don't care what your political beliefs are, right? Uh-huh. So if you are an investigative journalist who is on the left, or you are an investigative journalist who is on the right, or maybe it might be like the rarest thing in the world, an investigative journalist who is neither of the left or the right, but just wants to figure shit out. Like, where are they? It seems to me that, like, to announce what a nerd I was as a child, like during the summer of the Watergate hearings, I was 13. Like, dude, that's all I did. All I did was watch those hearings because, as they were riveting. And it just seems to me that, like, everything seems airsats. Everything seems like a Potemkin village.
Well, part of here's where I think you actually get some pretty radical departures on each side of certainly the American political spectrum, insofar as like the DNC right now, or Democrats right now, sort of like peak demonstration of, the meme of Nancy Pelosi on the phone that originally was like, buy these NVIDIA calls or whatever, but has since been has since been used all across the board, right? It's like you have that level of Xi Jinping style party control of like, we're going to orchestrate the meetings such that, do you remember when that poor guy got like taken off in the national, it was like in the Chinese, the I'm going to butcher exactly what this was. It was a couple of years back. He had one sort of main like opposition leader. And like during the main Congress of everybody getting in, it's like they got the cameras to point right at him in the middle of a speech, and then a bunch of people ushered him off stage, and then he was like not seen from again. It's like okay, like you're clear. It's like if they're basically doing, it's like, hey, like apparently the people want there to be a deep state. Let's give them some deep state. And then on the other side, you have like the phenomenon of sort of like the Arrested Development sketch type Trump family is back, and it's going to be Kimberly Guilfoyle as Secretary of State, and it's going to be, this incredibly ragtag shoestring thing trying to just keep alive the ember of this feeling of, can Trump still successfully do stand up to a crowd? Or has he lost the mojo, right? Wherein it's like, in either case, this concept of conventional journalism is sort of made a mockery of, because in the Democrat case, it's like, oh, you don't have access to what's really going on, so like you are only reporting on surface level symptoms. In the sort of Republican case, it's like the surface level symptoms are actually, not only is that literally like all there is to it, but it's like all there is to it in this sort of almost like it's all parody at this point. It's self-referential parody. And so it's like the act of reporting on it like ruins the, like it collapses the narrative. There's your narrative cost for it. It sort of collapses the ability of the magic to work anymore. And I think this is part of why you see all this sort of sputtering frustration out of like the past. Well, okay, when was Biden stepping down? Also, by the way, back to your previous idea, stepping down via a screenshot of a letter posted on Twitter by the Twitter intern or whatever. It's like, man, oof.
And then you hit on it, right? Like in earlier eras, the eyebrows would have all been, permanently like, what the fuck?
What? And they were like, I remember like in the 48 hours after Biden posted the letter, a fair amount of my feed certainly was like, hey, so sure. Did the intern get a little power drunk or something? Like, what's going on here? Like, do we know he posted this?
Yeah. The intern is like, oh, I'll do it myself, God damn it.
Do you remember, okay, so do you remember there was maybe a 36-hour story arc that it was the Obamas who were who were sort of like master choreographing before we settled on like, no, it was Nancy. Come on. They decided she was the superior meme for the format. But like, that was the really big, like it was always Barack all along. Like, he was always the one that controlled the Twitter account. Like, he had the keys to the Okta account. Like, I just love this idea of like, I forget, somebody posted this idea where it's like, hi, Verizon, I lost my phone. I need a new SIM card, please. My name is Joe Biden. Yep, I'll hold, please. Date of birth is... So, stranger things have happened.
So...
Verizon would do it, too.
Yeah, like, of course they would. Of course they would. That's the funny part. So it's just like everything, because we're so connected, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe what I hear you suggesting is that you have to relearn how to follow the breadcrumbs you mentioned earlier, right?
Mhm.
So you have to figure out, okay, so this was odd. It appeared on Twitter and it wasn't on presidential stationery. And
Mhm.
this look things that make you go, hmm. But the thing that I find interesting is like, let's not just keep picking on Biden. I mean, this is everywhere in politics. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you happen to be on,
Mhm.
it's everywhere happening the same way. And I'm just wondering, like, it, first off, does it need fixing? You can say no. If it doesn't, or if it does need fixing, how does that happen?
With let's see here. So the thing that was so the thing that was so compelling about that month in there that we seem to have now, I think now we're kind of past the month. Now it seems to be, it's like it's got back to business as usual. What was so compelling about it was things were genuinely surprising. Right. It's like, yeah, it's an actual surprise as the meta character, right? That is the meta characteristic that is attractive about something or that is desirable about something is really powerful. Um, there's a study that came out a while ago, which is if people were sort of screening various movies and then they put eye tracking things on people to look at where their eyes were focused and where their focus changed over time as the screens on the movie changes. And you can do all of this sort of signal analysis on each pixel of the movie frame, which is like, hey, like, where do people actually look, right? What are the characteristics? And especially in terms of like the information content as measured through like from an information theory point of view. And the answer is people don't look at the pixels where there is the most uncertainty, right? They look at the pixels where there's the most surprise, right?
Well, that's Claude Shannon's information theory in a nutshell, right?
Is yeah,
Basically, Shannon, right? What he said was, or it wasn't him, but somebody commenting on it was basically a political speech has zero information because it has no new or surprising things. A poem is just chock-a-block full of information because people are surprised.
yeah. So in this case, surprise is almost akin to like the first derivative of information. Um, it's like pure information isn't interesting either, right? It's like that's white noise, right? White noise is pure information, right? What's interesting is sort of relative changes in information versus sameness. Is where its signal is. This idea of like surprise as being inherently how you sell things is something that I've been really interested in. Because again, it's like if you think about like what are elections? Elections are a sales process, right? It's like you're trying to do it. There's an organized effort to sell a thing to a group, right? And there are competing processes, and the better one wins, right? So through that, like I've been really thinking a lot about did you read in the New York Times the other day? There was this great profile of Alex Karp, the Palantir CEO.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It included one of my favorite little lines, which I'd heard somewhere else, but it was nice to see it again, which is one of the Peter Thiel lines, which is like the paradox of sales. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Paradox of sales being, if you're trying to sell something, you need to do two things simultaneously that are in opposition to each other. On the one hand, you need the prospect to think, this guy is just like me, because that's how you build trust. But on the other hand, you need him to think, this guy is completely different from me, because that's how you get him to think that you have something he doesn't. Right? It's like, and you need to impose both of these things at the same time. It's like, we're just like you, except for I also have this mysterious reservoir of things from the Far East or whatever that contain mystery and therefore contain margin. Right? Without mystery, there is no margin. And so how do you do both of these things? Where it's like, one of the ways that you see people do this successfully is being able to surprise people, right? Like if I can really surprise you about something, it's like I've got most of the way to selling you something. It's like if you look at certainly in VC, right? And this idea of like the two-way sale between like a founder and an investor, which is a bidirectional sales process. It's like they're kind of both trying to do this dance wherein they both are like, we are the same. Like, we're a founder-friendly investment firm. And like, hey, I have all these characteristics of all these investments you are trying to pattern match against. But then also you need to have your angle where I'm like, I'm going to tell you something that makes you completely rethink everything you've ever thought, right, about X, right, from which you derive like the mystery that makes the sales process worthwhile, right, because there's margin up. Anyway, if you take this all sort of back to elections, right, the sort of question that you're asking is like, this is a large sales process that takes many months to complete, right? The way that you get people to sort of cue into like you being the team that is selling something interesting, right, that I need to pay attention to, that has mystery in it. So again, look at the Trump 2016 candidacy. Incredible on both dimensions, right? One, we're just like you because we have all these hilarious, everyman flaws, like that were made into spectacle. This man shits on a gold toilet seat. Wow, he's just like me. He also has no taste. But then also this idea of like, oh my God, there is this dark, mysterious force here that I don't understand. This is so compelling. I need to vote for this, right? Or if not, vote for it. Even this actually, I think, was particularly true for the people who are like, I will never vote for you. You're repulsive. But it's like, I have to pay attention to you, right? Which is, most of the battle. And it's like, nowadays, like 8 years later, it's like, man, I feel like there's no mojo on either count now out of that team from what I see anyway. It's like, it's no longer an everyman story, right? Because now it's sort of like retrenched to like, we're going to get back, but there's no mystery to it either, right? Like not especially. Like, I feel like a lot of what they used to use, like, it's sort of been replaced by, I don't know how you put it. Like, yeah, like I'm not completely current and up to date with like how things have shaken out going into the Democratic convention, but it feels like it's just sort of turning into this sort of like generic back to the regular, no surprises, slug it out campaign type of thing. Certainly, at least the Democrats would like to take it onto grounds where they can remove all the uncertainty out of it and sort of go play ground game, which is like, that's boring though. There's no good content in that.
Yeah, I
don't know if that answers your question at all, but
yeah, no, that's what I love about you, Alex, actually, is the fact that you sometimes, when going out of your way not to answer my question, you come up with beauties like there's only margin and mystery. Like, I love that. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm for sure our producers are going to pull that as a bull quote, no doubt.
Sure.
But
you know what I think said that originally, just to add a little tie in there, was actually Ryan Peterson from Flexport. When he's talking about freight forwarding, right? And people are like, lots of software people will be like, this sounds like a really low margin, shitty, stupid business that's done on pen and paper. Why do you think there's any money in this? He's like, because no one understands how this actually works, right? And it's like, there's so much mystery into it. And it was like, I fell for the line anyway. I thought it was a good line. I don't know if it's empirically true, but like, who cares?
So actually, I'll recount an old story when I was doing asset management. I had a guy who was the consultant to one of our largest we had a family that had sold their enterprise to a big company, and so they got a shitload of money. And my book, What Works on Wall Street, had just come out. And so, like, literally, he called me, and he's like, come out, please. You got to come to New Mexico, but I really like your process, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so my whole gig was complete transparency, right?
Mm-hmm.
We will show you every line of code that goes into the empirical algorithms that select the securities, et cetera, et cetera. And, you get to see everything. In fact, we even had a line. We use a lucite box, not a black box, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, the consultant who followed, about 2 years later, we had a portfolio that was literally fire. This is like the late 90s, so you can guess what kind of portfolio it was.
Oh,
it
sure.
was pure Momo, pure momentum.
Yeah.
And it was up triple digits going into the end of 1999. And so this guy says, can I come by and see you? I'm like, sure. And so he comes in, he sits down, and he goes, Jim, I want to make you like a billionaire. And there's one really simple thing you can do for that to happen. And I'm like, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
And he goes, make it a black box, make it a mystery. He goes, because without the mystery, you're only going to get like clients like the big client that I did retain, who he was advising, who was like a real engineer's mentality. If I can't see you the way it's working, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But that always struck me as something like, was I ever a fucking moron for not taking his advice?
Well, there's so much to this, where this idea of when does opacity make things better for everybody? But I feel like one of the classic examples is that like Venkatesh Rao has something about this, where it's like, suppose you have a set of 10 friends in high school, that if truth be told, if everybody actually sat down, you could rank them from 1 to 10 in coolness, right? It's like, no one is ever going to do this though, because everybody becomes worse off if you do this. Whereas like the only rule is that you have to know who's number 1 and you have to know who's number 10. Right? It's always clear who the alpha of the group is, and it's clear who the court jester is. Right? But 2 through 9 have to be a mystery. Yeah. And it's really interesting. It's like Wall Street gives you so many very literal examples where you can actually put numbers on the degree to which this is true. Like, to give you some examples, like you look at these closed-end funds that either trade to premiums or discounts to NAV. And like, the dream, what's it called? The fund that holds like a bunch of SpaceX and Stripe and shit, that trades at some massive premium.
Oh, that would be Kathy Wood.
No. This is not that. These are private companies.
Oh, private companies.
This is
got it.
Fund that somehow acquires shares of all these private companies.
No, I don't know about that one. That's interesting.
So Matt Levine talks about this a lot, but like the summary of this, like you have this fund, it owns all these privately held tech startups that are not like, it's not 2021 anymore, but they're still desirable. It's things like Stripe, and SpaceX is the big one, right? It's like people will pay you a premium to be able to say at the golf course, "Oh, I own some SpaceX," right? Right. So sure. Yeah, you can put a price on that. And so it acquires shares of all these tech startups, and so it lists and it trades at some stupid premium to NAV that is actually like harmful at this point, where it's like, yeah, having a small premium is fine, but if the premium is the majority of the price you are paying, then you're only buying a bet on the premium going up or down, right? It's like you're the degree to which you will make money on this investment has nothing to do with how SpaceX performs. It has everything to do with like how people feel like this like weird bet is going. The converse to that would be like the Bill Ackman story of like, we're going to do Pershing Square USA. It's going to trade to a premium, everybody. I'm going to raise 10 billion, and then it was 40 billion, and then it was like 1 billion, and now it's nothing. Right. Where he's like, well, I'm Bill Ackman, and I'm a great investor, and I would like to go buy things. I would like to go buy publicly listed companies. And because I'm Bill Ackman and because I have a lot of Twitter followers, it will add a lot of value. And therefore we feel like it should trade at a premium to NAV. And like, there was a period of time where people were like, yeah, until, it became like the keep it simple, stupid answer to the question made itself obvious, which is like, you can see which companies he's buying. They're publicly traded companies. Why would anyone pay a premium for this? Right. It's like, what do you think, we're morons? It's like there wasn't enough mystery to it, right? It's like the mystery was basically restricted to him saying, I really want to be able to tweet about these companies more, and I can't under my current fund structure. But if I can make this fund, then I'll be allowed to tweet more, and I'm good at Twitter. Therefore, there's premium here, right? Was more or less one of the cases being made. It's like there's no mystery about what Bill Ackman's tweets are, right? It's like you tweet enough. If you tweeted less, maybe you would have gotten your fund. Maybe you would have raised the money. But not the first time in history that mechanic has played out.
So is it almost like a barbell? Like when people ask me, for asset allocation advice, right? I'm like, what should you do? Well, I think what you should do is buy the cheapest all world ETF and just hold it, like literally. And or if you want to be very different than the market, like the portfolios that I design, but there's going to be mystery and fun in those because you have no idea what's going to happen. And then so on one end of the barbell are the mystery, right? Like the fund holding all those private I love that idea, by the way. I'm going to look further into that. So there's that, the mystery, and nobody knows how it gets done. Now, also in that category would be our friend Bernie Madoff. But then the other end of the barbell is like I can't remember which, you probably read it too. I think it was in the Journal or the New York Times about the pension fund, maybe Nevada.
Where's one guy?
Guy, index funds, and top percentile.
And okay, so this is what's so great about like there being 50 states is like, yeah, you get one state that's just like one guy who like gets up in the morning, makes some coffee, and like buys more SPY. Yeah, I also say I don't know the first thing about how you actually do capital allocation, like from a fund's point of view. It's like, yeah, I'm sure there's all this shit around like, oh, there's this much withdrawal commitments per year and this and that, and you have to do all the structure. I don't know how any of that shit works actually, right? What I do know is that like, if you measure all of these funds, they all underperform the S&P, and a lot of stories get told as to why they can't just buy the S&P. And so it's like, it's really nice to have one, right, to serve as the counterfactual, just to make him sweat a little bit, you know? Yeah. I really wonder sometimes the degree to which, like, okay, something really interesting is that Canada has a different flavor of that phenomenon, which is our pension funds directly buying these assets, right, without going through a layer or two, as you know. And that in turn makes a different category of people kind of frustrated, which is like, why aren't our services needed here? Why doesn't Canada understand that you need people packaging these products? It's like, I don't know, man. They just decided to buy the windmills directly, right? They're big and they can do that. And you know, like it seems to work for us. I think it leads to what I don't really know. You probably actually have a much better sense than I do. Is the degree to which is like, yeah, like if you're looking after a public pension or something like that, you reasonably need to do things like diversification of like, yeah, if our economy's in the shitter, it's good for some other country to own our toll roads and vice versa. Like you get that geographical stuff, but it leads to a lot of sort of like everyday complaints of people driving on the toll roads, like Highway 407 in Toronto, being like, I can't believe the Argentinians getting 20 more of my dollars or whatever. Is there like, and again, and that sentiment is actually a genuinely important input into like what is actually politically possible in terms of like when the tough choices are made to how to do things in the either public or quasi-public obligation pool, right? I.e. like, hey, are we actually doing right by all of our pensioners and our retirees? So like the degree to which you're like, not only are we going to sell off all these things, we're then going to go buy a bunch of stuff that is surprising. You know, we're gonna buy maximum surprise. I guess the Quebec pension did that when they bought a bunch of what's it called? Not Sam Bankman-Fried, but like the other one, Celsius.
Oh right.
Those guys, I think, did like 2 different big crypto scams, from what I recall. There's someone there is like really learned the lesson of like the best way to be successful in your career is to lose $1 billion. You know, well, he's just like me.
Yeah, yeah. John Merriweather did kind of a hat trick there. He was long-term capital fame, and then like I remember saying to a friend, "Well, this guy's never going to be able to raise money again."
Oh no,
was I ever
no,
wrong?
It was fun in 2 days. Oh yeah.
Well, this is intriguing to me because the thread today that I want to continue to pursue is this idea of mystery surprise equaling margin, right?
Sure.
So if you were consulting at, a startup of any variety, right? What would be your strategy? How would they do, like, Lulu Maservi, yeah? Okay. Mm-hmm. So I like her stuff because she consistently surprises me.
Yeah.
With the way
she's our boss now.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, she's
No,
on
I
our
didn't.
board. Yeah, she's on Shopify's board now.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
You can ask her for me
That's right.
because you're a big shot up at Spotify. Anyway,
That's right. The
so
music
so
streaming service.
so right, exactly. So how would you're putting your consultant hat on, given what we've just gone over, what we talked about, and let's say that you've got how would you have marketed that disastrous AI wearable? What do they even call it? I've blanked out its name.
Wait, so which one? The Humana one or the
That
friend?
that one. Because I bought one because I love all
Okay.
things AI. I gave it to one of my grandchildren and said, "Well, have fun if you can use it." But
Yeah.
walk me through how could they have done things better in terms of the theme and thread of mystery and surprise?
Well, I feel like we got that answered for us with the friend.com launch. You saw that, I trust.
I did.
Not only
I
is
ordered one.
this yes, okay, yeah. Not only is it this just great premise, which is like we don't make you more efficient in any way whatsoever. We're just your friend and we text you and say hi. Like, all right, that's already funny and compelling. But then but the thing that made it actually work is everybody getting mad on the internet being like, you raised $2.5 million and then you spent $2 million of it on friend.com. What an incredible waste of money. It's like, no, that's genius. Right. It's like, I cannot think of a better use of this money. It's like, first of all, if you tried to spend money to be the main character on Twitter for 2 days, how much money do you think it would cost? More than that. Then you get friend.com. The domain and the
load
residual.
more than that.
Yeah. It's like, and you also have this nice domain name that you can probably sell for like decent recovery value. Yeah, like again, if a part of this, like I think there's in the perennial sort of like product managers and taste sort of discussion of like, are you selling something very concrete to the user, which is like, look at the value that you are getting, which we are going to spell out in very understandable bullet points, right? Like, here is the pain points we're solving you, and here is how much money it's costing you, and here is how much you earn by using our product. And then there's the counter thing, which is like, this product feels nice. It is aesthetically beautiful. You like it for reasons you have a hard time putting your finger on. You just do. A lot of the really high leverage products in the large sense have that second characteristic of like, I like it because it's fun and aesthetically nice to use. Toby cares about this a lot with Shopify's product, and that is informed not from best practices on how to make SaaS products, but more from best practices on how to write programming languages. Right? It's like the really, really, really great programming languages, which are, some of the highest leverage things we've built today, it's like, yeah, like the main thing they care about here is sort of like developer ergonomics and like, what are the ways in which they feel delightful to use? And then what are costs that they incur in order to get you those feelings of that delightful use case in other ways? Right. It's the idea of ergonomics is one way you can describe it. Aesthetics is another way to describe it. And really, it's like, again, this sort of comes down to like, there are a handful of people on Twitter who are just like really good at hammering home this beat, like Shay Taylor. One of these people who's just like, yeah, like the great thing about Silicon Valley is also the great thing that sort of holds it back in these powerful ways, which is that it's a bunch of nerds that don't understand aesthetics, except for a handful of them really do understand aesthetics, and then they win. So it's the Steve Jobs calligraphy story. Whether it's one of those stories where it's like whether that story actually happened or not, it's like it doesn't matter. Like it's true now. Like now it's part of the canon, right? It's part of the lore, right? Like the fact that he was a calligraphy student in Oregon is like essential to the development of like, oh no, like every line inside the map has to be like a brushstroke, and like everything, like the why they needed to do the Lisa. Like, I don't know my Apple history as well as I should, but just this idea, which is like, oh yeah, like everything that made it special was everything that was the exact mirror space of like, here are the benefits you're going to get that are sort of spelled out in very legible relief, right? The things that are illegible are the things you actually want because there's mystery in them, right? It's like there is mystery in terms of like, what is it that you want? right? And why do I want it, right? That like the minute that you sort of make it really, really legible, you kind of, you'd sort of like wreck a lot of it. I don't know.
As I listen to you, I'm thinking of Howard Bloom's book on how to reinvent capitalism, and I'm thinking about my friend Rory Sutherland, and they kind of have the same message, which is if you really want to supercharge anything, right, that you're trying to sell, if you're trying to sell something, what you really ought to address is not the old school when advertising began, right? It was basically a block of text. Here are the benefits for this product. And then it would be just literally looks like a tombstone of text.
Yeah.
And
features.
And features, right? And both Rory and Howard Bloom would argue, no. What you got to do is you have to address feelings, because that's the entire game. The entire game is going to be through addressing feelings. Now, I don't entirely agree with that, obviously, quant that I am. But, what do you think about that?
Well, okay. So there's this really great summit talk. This is Shopify's annual conference that Toby did several years ago, where he says, hey, what is it that people in the video game industry really understand that other people in the business world don't understand? And so he frames it, he sort of inverts the problem like this. He's like, imagine if a bunch of SaaS companies tried to make Mario Brothers. Right? What would happen? How would they do it? It's like, well, they would get a bunch of people together and they would do their user research and they would figure out their problem, which is the problem is that the princess needs to be rescued from the castle. Right. So we're going to go build a product. We're going to do a lot of efficiency and figure out a lot of flows. And we're going to take all of the friction out of the product because nobody likes friction, right? Friction is bad. And at the end, what you get is a single Windows XP dialog button that says rescue princess. Okay. Then you're like, there we go. Right. We ship the product. It's like, okay, why is this absurd? Right. Why is this so obviously, funny in this video game example? It's like, well, it's like from the point of view of a game, it's like the product is everything that leads until the button where you rescue the princess, right? It's not just it's like the product itself is the journey there, right? And the challenge of you learning how to play this game and learning what a Goomba is and learning how to jump over it. And the feeling of you doing it yourself is actually what you're paying for, right? And this flies sort of directly in the face of this sort of very simple maxim of friction is bad, get rid of the friction. If you get rid of the friction more, then the utility of the objective is even more salient and then people will want to. And it's like, no, actually, there's something really important in the it's like if the purpose of the product is just to deliver you some result, then it's like, yeah, that approach can work fine. But if the real purpose of the product is kind of to change you as the user, as for you to feel that you are learning a skill or developing a certain aptitude or developing a certain characteristic of yourself, then it's like, no. Learning how to play the game is actually the entire product. And you overcoming the friction and you doing everything is that's where all the joy is. And something really interesting is there are a handful of sort of contemporary products that all have shared this characteristic of when they're really early and they're really glitchy and hard to use is when users love them the most, right? And so if you think about early Snapchat, or actually in a slightly different way, early Web3, right? Where it's using this thing was awful, right? It was the web, the UI of just connecting your wallet and claiming a token or whatever. This is the most miserable thing. But also people are relentlessly addicted to it and they love it because it's a challenge that they've learned how to do, right? And inevitably what happens is you try to grow these products, as you try to grow these user bases, you end up optimizing for getting rid of all of those things as the product matures and becomes more real and all the glitches around out in it. And it's yeah, you more successfully achieve the outcome that the product does, but at the cost of all the joy of using it. And if people were primarily using it for the joy, then it's guess what? They're going to move on, right? They're going to move on to something else, right? They were never actually out for the thing that you thought the thing was solving. They were out for a certain kind of entertainment and story and feeling of accomplishment and feeling of I did this. So there's something really in there where it's you sow the seeds of your failure by fixing your bugs, is it's really, there's no obvious answer to what to do. It's like, okay, so do you leave the bugs in? It's like, no, not exactly. Like, but you need to know what your product is and why people are deriving their juice from it, on a regular basis.
That's really scarily close to what I am looking at right now. And we're looking at a particular, I wouldn't even call it a product, but more of a platform in which, like, all of the things you just mentioned have to be present, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you could go to a platform where you could get surprised by whatever new content is there. I hate that word content, but I can't come up with a better word for it yet. But the ability to engage people through puzzles, through learning, through experimentation, but it absolutely has to be fun. If it's not fun, then right, it's like trying to come up with new ways to teach grade schoolers math.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen a bunch of companies, some of them that we were quite intrigued by. And they involve like teaching kids things in a new way. And the thing that I continued to come back to, which is the reason for this other idea that we're working on, is like, how boring can you make this? Right. So if it was the intention in America and to a lesser extent in Canada, when we formed our educational systems, it was industrialists saying to the state, no. What we want is them to be acclimatized to sitting in a room for 8 hours following instructions. Right.
Right.
So that might have worked for the industrial era. We need a whole new way of teaching people today. And I think, it's my opinion, I'm usually wrong, as you know. But it's my opinion that we have to engage fun. We have to make it entertaining as well.
Yeah. I mean, so the distillation of all of, I think, the well-intentioned and constructive theory that you can say about like, how do you get people to develop agency in the world and like grow out to be useful members is literally like make things, right? It's really, really just it's like this act of like, when you make something, right, all of the really hard to describe but necessary parts of challenging people are distilled into instructions that are not hard to follow. It's like, hey, start with nothing, make something, right? And it's like, what happens to you? And then what happens to you as a result, right, is really constructive, right? This idea of like, hey, are you making something in the world that you are proud of, right? That feels like a gift that you're making to the world, right? Because you've put in all the loving care into the details that people will never see. And because, like you have all this emotional attachment into this particular process that you did in order to make it good. Like to me, like my sort of personal example in my life that I always think back to is when I was, in the band and we were making music and recording albums. And it's like, you're making art, right? And you're making it, right? It's like, you're not making a PowerPoint presentation about the art, right? You have to make the art. And that process, and there's just an unbelievable level of depth that goes into the process of like, turns out that like fractally within the challenge of make an album is the equally difficult challenge of how do you put a mic on a snare drum, right? Turns out that challenge contains just as much challenge as the parent challenge, right? And it fractively goes to infinity down below it, right? So how do you get a snare drum to not sound like shit on a recording? It's actually really hard. From a process of teaching people, like, hey, how do you interact with this challenge in general? It's like there's no substitute for make stuff. Yeah.
So I'm happy you said that, because that is part of, like, as I'm writing about this to think about it. One of the things that I jotted down is you have to allow users to make stuff in a variety of categories, right? And the engagement comes, I think that many people, I love the comment about agency, right? Like, how do you make a high agency person?
Yeah. Yeah.
You make a high agency person by giving them challenges and puzzles and everything that engage them and that they actually execute against, right?
I guess my contention, if I were to try to steelman your argument a little bit, which is that like I'm skeptical about puzzles in the sense that doing a puzzle is not the same thing as making something. Doing a puzzle can often feel like work, but actually be fake work. It's like, and not to say that there's no value in them. I love doing a crossword. I think they're like, a crossword can be great. I think there is an overwhelming amount of evidence that, for example, doing crosswords is great at every year of your life. But I don't think it's quite the same thing as making something. Maybe it's worth unpacking the difference there. I think like
let me give you an idea on something to rip off.
Yeah.
Like, so if it was books, would making something apply to fan written fiction?
Oh yeah. Look, if you're actually writing it and it's actually a real, like, so I think there's a huge difference between writing a fanfic book versus writing fanfic like comments, right? It's like, to actually make something requires you to go through the process of like hating it and like refactoring it and like feeling that you're bad at doing it and like, all of the essential steps of sort of the creative act, which involves, the requisite amount of self-loathing and the requisite amount of, having to go on the journey of realizing that at the bottom of the trough, you actually open up all the possibility and all the good stuff. Right. I think and that's not to say that longer equals better. It's just like it is more often correlated with you actually going through the hard work. Burton Hobart, of newsletter fame, has a good observation about this. And I have actually observed this as well with my newsletter back in the day, which is there's a pretty direct correlation between how many people read any given newsletter issue and how long it is. And the correlation is not the shorter, the more. It's the longer, the more. Right, the longer the piece is, the more people read it. And you're like, wait a minute, it flies against everything I've heard about how what we want is short form content and our expectations are for shorter. It's like, well, what we actually want is things that are good, right? And things that are long are more likely to be good because it's more likely you went through the crucible, right, of having to make it, right? It's like, not the mileage may vary, but like for the most part, that relationship is going to hold true, I think. So if you go back to this idea of like, how do you get people into the habit of doing that thing? A lot of it is like, if you look at crafts and disciplines that have really, really good traditions to them. So like engineering being one of the hallmark examples of like, the tradition of engineering is all the stuff that works for a reason. Another one is sort of like the tradition of designers, right? It's like all these people have this sort of common element of like, what is your portfolio? Right? Show us your portfolio of things that you have made, right, that you regularly revisit and that you can send to somebody. If somebody says, hey, what have you made? You can send somebody an email that contains links to 10 things you've made, right? It's like, it really does not matter what those things are. What matters is that you have it in a form. And again, if the thing you're sending is like really good PowerPoint decks, it's like, I'm not saying that's impossible. It is totally possible that you can make something that takes the form of like what would mostly be sort of like analysis or deliberation. Like, I don't know, there exists somewhere some slide deck, probably on actual like adhesive slides, that was like John Malone inventing EBITDA, right? Right. It's like, okay, that counts as something you made, right? And it probably appeared in the form of PowerPoint deck before PowerPoint, right? But like, still, you made that, right? A lot of real, like work went into being like, we're going to make a thing and now we have it and like, and it's good. Like, yes, that counts as a thing you made, but like most often, like it's going to be somewhat more tangible.
So what would you do if, let's put it into something that is more in your vernacular. Like somebody comes to you at Shopify and you think, oh, okay, they seem to have really great products. They seem to be differentiated enough. Like, take us through, like, if there are two of those companies selling pretty much identical merchandise, what are the characteristics of the one who sells a shit ton? And what are the characters, and obviously no names, what are the characteristics of the one who just, even though they're selling the same stuff, just don't engage. They don't get a foothold.
Yeah. Okay. So we get to do this thing, which we always do in every episode of Infinite Loops, which is to bring it back to the original topic of margin is mystery, right? So again, in e-commerce, e-commerce sort of E-commerce is commerce, except for CAC is rent, right? Like instead of paying, like when you run a storefront business, right, one of the main variables is under your control is like, where do you set up the store, right? Do you set up the store in the place that has tons of foot traffic and is expensive rent? Or do you put it like way out in some like abandoned lot because your customers absolutely need your product and they will drive 20 minutes for it, so therefore you can pay nothing on rent? Or are you trying to figure out some sort of optimal thing in the middle based on particulars, right? So with e-commerce, it's the same thing, except for instead of foot traffic, right, it's like, where am I putting my ads? How am I thinking about where my ads go? Or like, yeah, how are you generating people like discovering your product and finding your way to your store and buying, right? This is not the most surprising thing you've ever heard. And as a merchant, more or less what you do is you're like, okay, I have my product and I sell my product for a gross margin. Let's say the gross margin is 40% or whatever. And like that gives me a budget out of each, sale to be like, all right, how am I allocating this budget, right, in order to make the bicycle stay upright as it travels? You have a lot of ways that you can think about doing this. You can say, like, I'm going to fling all of it at Facebook to do Instagram ads. You can say, okay, I want to do affiliate sales, right? Where I can say like a bunch of affiliate, I'm gonna have Jim go out and like tweet about the product, and I'll give him 10% off for every user that comes and uses code, infinite loops, right? Like that's the thing you can do. You can say, I'm going to really develop a mailing list of first party users. And then from that mailing list, I'm going to say, here is 25% off because you're my customer. And that's how I spend that margin, right? Like discounts on a product, like is another huge source of like spending that margin, right? And ultimately, if you look at the people that don't just sell a lot of products, but actually like have really sustainable businesses, right? It's like sustainable businesses are the ones where you're actually making a lot of money on the products you sell, not just selling a lot of volume. And like in order to do that, it's like the main way that you sort of shoot yourself in the foot as a business is just to give everything away in the discount, right? Give everything away like in order to get people in the door. Like whereas in contrast, it's like the people who a lot of the businesses that really work are businesses that, not to say that every business is a scarcity business or a Veblen good business, but like the invention of the flash sale, right, was a like remarkable discovery of like, again, like you think flash sales are getting the friction out of commerce? No, like you're making it harder for people to buy the sneakers. That's why they buy them and why they pay full price for them, right? Is just that little feeling of being squeezed in and being a little uncomfortable, and there being a bit of mystery as to whether you will get it or not, and there being a bit of mystery in terms of how many people will show up, right? Like a lot of, again, there are some businesses like, like retail and like sneakers and like fashion and things like that, where, flash selling is well understood and pretty much all of that happens on Shopify. But there is a much larger in business that is, for the most part, not on Shopify, which is the broader industry that looks like things like publication and ticketing and various kinds of selling, either sort of like the rights to a place in line or the rights to a piece of copyrighted intellectual property, or things where it's like you're not really selling a physical thing, right? You are creating value and then arranging the value in such a way that people line up for it, right? Like that is, one of the big areas of Shopify. We'll get to it eventually, right? But like just things like Live Nation, Ticketmaster, everybody's mad at them, right? It's like, yeah, you want to know why people are mad at them? Because they make all the money and they make it in mysterious ways, right? And the mystery is not just them having a black box for like, how do I get the ticket as opposed to a bot get the ticket? It's because also there is a mystery of like rights agreements between, like, just in the case of a concert, it's like you have the record label, you have the artist, you have the like separate company that is contracted with selling the merch for the artist, and the separate point of sale system that has the exclusive rights to do that, paying out the cut to the venue, who then pays their cut to Live Nation, who then is like, yo, this world is so mysterious, right? And the people who actually live in this world, right, and really like, I'll plug one of my favorite app partners, this guy named Tommy, who runs a company called Single Music, right? They're one of my favorite Shopify apps because it's like, look, their job is just to understand this murky, black box, mysterious cavern, right? And have the flashlight that they can take people around and be like, hey, do you want your business to be able to do X? Okay, well, we can help you do that. And they can charge lots of money and they earn every amount of it, right? By just having like this virtuous saying, like, by using this, you're not going to have to spend all your margin on this thing because you're going to understand the mystery, right? And you're going to be able to play it's in this dark space. And I think Shopify's job is not to shine light on every single dark cavern where money is being made. It's like our job is more just be like, hey, here is sort of this common stable platform on which various different people can build their ways of taking people through the dark caves and getting the mystery and helping you run your businesses, such that if they ever have to interact together, it just works. Right. That's, I think, part of our job that we really try to do is try to lower the cost of communicating across firms in the COS sense, right? Such that more fascinating, mysterious work can be done by small entities as opposed to large ones. Right. That's really sort of like the work, right? The really great work is for small teams of creative, motivated people to have access to mysterious margin, right? As opposed to the only people who can capture it being big companies. It's a good way of summarizing the challenge.
That oddly makes it, given our normal conversation, that oddly sounds like an actionable item for me. So I appreciate that.
Well, I wanted to ask you about this actually, which is like, in the asset management world, and this is this world that has gone through a couple of different reinventions, over your life, right? Like, how has sort of like the mystery relative to like the ultimate client or whoever is paying for this ultimately, how has that mystery moved around and changed shape over your career, and who has been able to exploit it in its different forms?
That's a great.
Mutual funds and now it's payment for order flow, whatever all those words that people throw around.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you could invent or come up with and explain well to potential investors a new way of investing in the market. For example, like my book, What Works on Wall Street, literally made me, right? Because what I did was I went, everyone, like when you listen to all these people talk about what kind of stocks they like, they're always talking about, we like a stock that has a low PE ratio. We like a stock that has, the highest growth rates, et cetera. I was always like, wonder how that works over long periods of time. And so did the book. For the first 6 months of O'Shaughnessy Capital, which was the first version of what became OSAM, all of our interest was inbound. One of the guys who worked for me is very funny, and he said that one of my original employees was arguably the highest paid phone rep in the world because literally all the calls came in to us. We raised about $600 million after the book, and that wasn't nothing back in the late 90s. I've always operated under the assumption if you've got something right and you're there ahead of other people, the only way that you can make sure that it's sustainable is you better have a competitor or two show up rather quickly, right? So if they don't, you're wrong. And for whatever reason, people were initially interested, but it wasn't going to perpetuate. So, for example, if you can invest or invent an asset class or what seems to be an asset class, like for example, I tried it with Netfolio. Patrick, my son, actually brought it to fruition at OSAM with Canvas, which is personalized investing. Strategy or done just for you, right? So that worked because all of a sudden you could have a portfolio that was truly unique to you, right? So you no longer had like ESG funds, for example. Well, with Canvas, you can do your ESG, Alex's ESG. If you happen to like, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, you get to pull. Yeah, me too. You get to pull the buttons. I always had a problem with the idea of the so-called ESG fund being somebody else's idea of what was a ethical investment, right? So, but the thing that I always laud Patrick for, because it is critical, and I think you'll probably agree, he was able to, coming up with the term custom indexing, he was able to take
Such a great term,
isn't it? Like when he walked into my office with that, I was just like,
active management,
oh my,
custom
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Because what he did was he colonized already deeply embedded in our cognitive awareness. Indexing, and when we came up with Canvas, was about as popular as it could ever get. Then take the word custom and put it in front of it's indexing just for Alex.
Well, it's everything is
This book.
right?
Everything is positioning. Yeah. Yes. Everything is positioning. So it has changed in the regard to those kind of things can get real legs. If you're first in a new asset class, you can do super, super well if you execute right. But ultimately, the way we always do, Alex, we're coming back to our original point in the conversation.
That's right. Yeah.
The guys who do really well tend to be the 2 and 20 guys who are deeply mysterious. And so there was a study done, for example, like when all the robo-advisors came online, everyone was saying, well, if you're logical, this is what you're going to do. You're just going to do it because it's going to be the lowest cost in the world. And, you get a good index fund or whatever. But the secret is once your wealth gets above a certain amount, at the time of the study I'm familiar with, it was like $500,000 US.
Sure.
Even if you are the most do-it-yourself type of person, you want somebody else to be your wingman, right? Mm-hmm. You need somebody else, or want, for the most part, unless you're an anomaly, to do that. And that's how, despite all of the ideas, like you're probably just better off with an index fund, right? It continues to be a massive industry.
Honestly, like just speaking for myself, the single product that I would want, and if this exists, tell me if it exists, that I would want most, when people are talking about like AI, right, and like all the new language, like GPT stuff, and like what is it going to be useful for? To me, it's like when I look at all this, I'm like, okay, like a lot of these use cases seem a bit suspect to me, but the one that just doesn't, the one where it's like I buy that this is the most important thing in a long time, is the ability for it to be a good teacher. So it's saying like, hey, if you are learning a skill, if you are putting in the hours how to make things, right, how to play the piano, how to go make anything, or like how to be an investor is one of those things. It's like the main thing that you really need is the ability to sort of like try things and get stuck and get yourself unstuck, right? And having a teacher who is infinitely patient with you, right, and non-judgmental. Right, because it's like I really don't like all the use cases where it's like this is like a human but worse, but not much worse. It's like I'm zeros on all this. What I'm more into is like what are the situations where it being not a human is better than it being a human, and it being non-judgmental is like the biggest one. It doesn't get tired of you, it doesn't judge you, it doesn't get exasperated with you making the same mistake a bunch of times. It's just helpful, right? And it's just helpful because it's just a thing running on your computer. Right, that is, it's not a real person. So it's like, yeah, like the ability to say, like, I kind of like to tell people, if people ever ask me, they're like, hey, like, should I own individual stocks or should I own index funds? My general answer is like, well, you should basically own index funds, but there's a notable exception here, which is like the value of buying an individual stock is it makes you give a shit about the stock, and you might learn something. Right, by really following it and seeing a thing go up or down, and like more things about the company surface in your like Google feed, and it's like it makes you take an interest into all of these things that you wouldn't otherwise know, and it's like that's actually probably worth a tick or two of performance if you actually learn something in the process, and it makes you better, right? It up levels you in a meaningful way. It's like like your ability to supercharge that with having teachers sort of like embedded in your portfolio, which is like, hey, like, it's like that really seems like an awesome product, right? Where again, the thing where it's like, it is not promising better returns, nor is it promising you like a cheaper, but just as good version of something that a human would do. It's just like, look, here's non-judgmental, not outcomes help, but like process help, right? It's like, man, like that's super, 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 super promising. I think a lot of that
You
is,
just described
focuses around the
many of the things that we are working on here at our little O'Shaughnessy Ventures.
Excellent. Sign me up. When it's available in Canada, let me know.
And as you know, we also invest in outside companies. So Synthesis School is complete AI for kids. And kids are learning at rates that are ridiculous. They are off the charts because the Synthesis has nailed the idea of they're non-judgmental, they're infinitely patient, and the kids they just absolutely love using these programs.
Yeah.
And you're also hitting a bit on one of my passions, which is if you want to help people learn things, it's got to be fun. And it also has to be, or maybe wrong term, fun.
Yeah, I don't think fun is the right word. I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
It has to feel real.
Yes. Yeah. It's got to feel like, oh, this is going to keep my attention for a long time because I just love doing it.
The expense of realness is counterproductive, which is a lot of what people do when they gamify things.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Boy, we could not be more copacetic because that's the problem, right? When you just intentionally say, oh, we're going to gamify how to learn how to invest. We're going to gamify. No. It has to be real where that person literally is like, man, I just learned a shit ton about, and fill in the blank, Alex. It doesn't have to be about investing. It can be about any other thing. And your key element here that we have also agree with is the non-judgmental part.
Yeah.
For example, in my history as an asset manager, like you could always tell if a husband and a wife, we didn't deal with the end client very often, but in our early days, we did, right? And when the husband and the wife came in, I would bet dollars to donuts and win virtually all of those bets. The man does not want to admit that he doesn't know what Kager means. The man will not admit that he doesn't know what a
I've been to a few of those in school, but
exactly,
buddy, I'm an expert on Kager.
Me too,
buddy. Don't worry.
but especially the difference between men and women here is really critical. Men will not admit that they don't know terms of art that are jargon, that if you're good at what you do, you shouldn't be using anyway, right? But they will never admit it. For women, on the other hand, the wife is always like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? I don't understand. Like, can you just explain this to me quite simply? And the amount, and of course, it's not always the man or the woman. Sometimes there's women who are also that way.
Mileage may vary.
Mileage may vary. But the point is, if you can solve that problem, you have a massive thing on your hands.
I think I texted you while this was happening, but several months back, we were in the process of buying life insurance, which is like, like I can't name a single product in the world where there's a bigger discrepancy between how good the product is and how awful it is described. It's like, here's a product that's literally just like, stop paying taxes. That's a great product. I love that product. Give me more. But how it's sold is just miserable. Anyway, point being is like, so as part of this process, my wife is there. Yeah, it's the usual sort of uncertainty of like, do you know what you're doing here? And I'm like, and then in the middle of it, they try to sell me some O'Shaughnessy funds. Because it's real bad, right? So I thought of you during this. It's like, God, stay out of this. So there's
I love that, and
we didn't get him. Sorry.
On that note, I ignored the first caneful from my producer, but I'm going to have to pay attention to the current one. Alex, as always, like the emergent properties of these conversations I'm putting them all in AI.
Well, this is what I was just going to say. It's like now we can actually finally get this done because, like it's like in the old days, like our all three of our listeners would have had to have done that themselves. But this time you just get Claude to do it, and we'll have like a book. Great. I look forward to it.
And again, one of the privileges that you earn is that you get to incept more people more times than anyone else because you've been on more. So you remember the exercise. We're dubbing you the Emperor in Glory. You can't kill anyone. You can't put them in re-education camps. You can't do any of that. But you can speak into the magic microphone, two things. Everyone's going to wake up the next morning and say, I just had two of the best thoughts in the world. I'm going to act on them. What you got?
One thing that I was thinking about recently on exactly this prompt was like, if I could wave a magic wand and change one group of people's like attitudes about something, like I think one that I'm currently thinking about is like, get the green energy people to be more both curious and also grateful about oil and gas. And I'm thinking this for a variety of reasons. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's like everybody seems to agree that like oil and gas got us here and they're very important, and now we got to get off them, and how are we going to do it? And it's like the fact that like a lot of these things have turned into ideological purity tests is like incredibly counterproductive, right? Whereas starting with like, oh man, it is so cool that we managed to like actually pull off all this amazing infrastructure to get all of this, like cheap fuel to do all this amazing things. It's like, that's the right starting point, I think, for figuring out like how we're going to get this big transition happen, as opposed to, you look at what's going on in, that's not even oil and gas. Look what's going on in Germany is just sort of like really tragic.
Very.
And it's like, okay, how are we going to avoid that, right? Like, how is North America going to like really avoid that? We have a bunch of advantages, but I think like it has to start with this sort of like mindset of sort of like not just appreciation, but also sort of like genuine curiosity of like the fact that we pulled off within 3 generations a production and distribution system that result in, this like thick oil from Venezuela being tiny explosions in the cylinder of your car that makes it go down the street when you push a button with your foot or a pedal with your foot. It's like, that's insanely cool. And I hate to see a lot of stuff when it comes to electricity and batteries and all the next stuff turn into like a much more dumbed down version of like, man, like the old challenge was really good though. And it was fun that we did it. And like, maybe this one should be as interesting too. So that's my answer. That's my answer for this time around.
I love it, Alex. As always, it is a joy to talk to you. Hopefully next time around, it will be less time in between conversations because we have a book that we have a book that has to write itself here, my friend.
That's right. So, that's the modern book deal. Right. It's like you don't get an advance to write the book. It's like you've already paid for the GPT credits. Now you have to produce the content. All right,
Alex.
Thanks, Be well. Great to talk to you.
Bye.
I'll see you later. I'm curious what your answer to this would be, but my favorite idea of the alive versus dead and growth versus post-growth is this idea that startups are dangerous, right? Young businesses full of all this explosive energy are really dangerous because it's very easy for them to say yes to things, right? It's like somebody's like, hey, we should do this thing. And everybody's like, yeah, sure, right? And then you do it. It's like, oh my God, that's so dangerous. Right. It's like, it's dangerous because these people are idiots. They don't know any of the costs. They don't know any of the downsides. They don't know anything about anything. It's like the famous PayPal story where it's like they didn't know what a chargeback was until like a year into making a business. Like, yeah, that's dangerous, right? Because these companies can actually say yes to things and move, right? And then if you sort of contrast this to a big organization where it's like, some question poses itself in front of some leaders, and in order to get to yes, you have to get like 10 different stakeholders to all say yes to something. And inevitably what happens is you get 9 yeses and 1 no, and the 1 no is actually for principled good reasons. So you're like, all right, what do you do here? Rarely is the answer to be increasingly convincing and change the no into a yes. What actually happens is someone steps up and saying, all right, I'm going to do some leadership here. I am staking my personal social capital on saying you need to disagree and commit. And then if this turns out to have been a good course of action to take, I earn my social capital back with interest, right? And if it turns out to have been a poor decision to make, then I lost that capital, right? I spent it and I got no ROI on it. And this act of sort of continuously and again, the social capital takes the form in the company of storytelling. Right. It's like it exists as stories in people's minds, and like you can draw on the sort of Toby talks about this a lot, of saying like the founder actually has this incredible reservoir of storytelling capital, which gets replenished every time people tell the founding story of the company, or people tell the founding story of like some product or some decision or whatever. It's like that's what keeps this capital alive. And the thing is that like having this capital is not enough, right? It's like if people one day decide in the company, it's like, I don't really need to reinvest and restake this social capital on turning no's into yeses. I'm going to simply coast where I am. That's when growth is over, right? That's when you can no longer turn those no's into yeses. And then it's like you are what you are at that point, right? You can't do anything meaningfully new or hard without that thing. And it's like, it turns out that it sort of reverts back to the literal definition of a growth versus a value business. Right? Growth businesses are businesses that are able to reinvest all of the social capital that their risk takers earn. And if you're not doing that, then growth is over, right? You're only worth the DCF of previous risks taken, by people, then you be that as it may. And anyway,
I completely agree. I might use some of this in the pod. All right. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely. All right, let's go.